Germany was among the top 5 most competitive global economies. Right now, Germany ranks somewhere around number 20. So Germany has lost international competitiveness. The German governments over the last decade have simply missed the train to invest in the economy and to modernize the economy in the good times. Now they will have to do it in the bad times.
Germany's economy is now expected to shrink for the second year in a row. That's the glum news from the German economy ministry out this afternoon. Previously, the government had expected growth for 2024 up 0.3%, but the new estimate shows a contraction of 0.2%. For more, we're joined by Carsten Brzeski, chief economist at ING Germany. Carsten, were you surprised by this news?
No, in all honesty, not really. Because I think now the government is the last one in a long series of institutions revising downwards their growth forecast for this year. And it shows again that some institutions were simply too optimistic at the start of this year, hoping more than analyzing and really seriously predicting this recovery for 2024. But I think now it's really that the reality check had been a very hard one over the summer, and now the government is simply acknowledging the fact that Germany is once again stagnating, once again the growth laggard of Europe.
So what caused this reality check? Because that initial projection for this year was already not super optimistic, only 0.3% plus. Now we're looking to be back in the negative. So how did this reality check come to pass?
Yeah, I think at the start of the year, many people thought that there would be more demand coming out of the U.S., coming out of China for German goods. The American case, yes, I think held up, but Chinese demand has clearly disappointed when it comes to the German economy. That is one thing. The other thing that many more optimistic forecasters had been banking on was the return of the German consumer. With real wages growing the fastest pace in a decade, there was hope that we would see private consumption really picking up, but we haven't, because instead we see that there is a lot of precautionary savings going on in Germany, and German consumers simply holding back consumption. That is one thing. That's the cyclical component. But you also have the structural component, and that was something that the government, I think, has been now underestimating for a couple of years in a row. And this structural component means Germany has lost international competitiveness. Germany is facing a system rival in China. And Germany is simply not as strong anymore structurally as it used to be a decade ago.
Let's compare Germany to some of the other top economies around the world, looking at IMF predictions for this year and combined with the information we have today from the German economy ministry. Here's how Germany is expected to stack up against the US, China, Japan, and India, those projections there. Yet again, it is expected to be the only economy to contract of those 5, basically a repeat of what happened in 2023, as you can see here. Carsten, that looks pretty bad. How badly is Germany lagging behind the rest of the world's top economies?
Far. When you look also at international competitiveness rankings, Germany 10 years ago, when we were celebrating or enjoying Wirtschaftswunder 2.0, Germany was among the top 5 most competitive global economies. Right now, Germany ranks somewhere around number 20. So Germany has lost international competitiveness. And that is exactly what is now reflected in these growth numbers. It is not to say that Germany is completely different than the rest. Other countries, other developed economies also do have a big industrial production sector. Other countries are also depending on export. But Germany, I think, is the most exposed to what is currently going on in the global economy, namely that there is geopolitical uncertainty, that energy prices are no longer stable and certain, that the role of China has changed. And this is clearly what is hitting the German economy the most, plus homemade. The German governments over the last decade have simply missed the train to invest in the economy and to modernize the economy in the good times. Now they will have to do it in the bad times.
As I was looking at some of the economies just under this top 5, it had me wondering if Germany is at real risk of slipping down the list of these top economies. Is there a risk of the economy shrinking in a real way?
Oh, definitely there is. Because in the end, what does it mean that you are a highly competitive economy? What does it mean that you're a highly innovative economy? It simply means you have very well paid jobs. You are really on top of the ladder of the supply chain, of the production chain. So if Germany now continues to drop on this ranking in competitiveness, if it becomes less innovative, it might very well be that the labor market remains relatively stable because we also have demographic change. But the jobs that Germany will have will be lower paid than before. And this is a gradual decline of, call this economic welfare, of economic prosperity. And that is what we're currently witnessing. It is not as painful as a financial crisis or a pandemic in the short run, because it is more gradual. It is more silently coming in. But that is what we're currently witnessing.
Are the challenges facing Germany here unique, or is this more of a self-imposed error?
Well, you need to make a distinction here. So Germany has, the global factors are also affecting other developed economies. Germany is not the only country being dependent on industrial production. Germany is not the only country being dependent on automotives, for example. Germany is not the only country facing Chinese competition. But the order of magnitude, the size by which Germany is facing these challenges is unique, and is probably the biggest, the largest one compared with other developed economies. Then you have the homemade part, and there Germany is also unique, unfortunately, because Germany has simply missed and forgotten to invest. When you look at the German investment ratio over the last 10 years, it has clearly been one of the lowest in Europe. So Germany forgot to invest in digitalization, in infrastructure, in education. And now, with these very weak GDP growth forecasts, it is paying the price for it.
We've talked a little bit about energy prices already. That's a refrain we hear here in Germany quite a bit. But Germany is not the only country dealing with high energy prices. So what's really going on here?
No, Germany is not the only country dealing with high energy prices, but Germany is the only country which exited nuclear energy without having already a very solid alternative. So Germany also forgot to really invest in the alternative, being renewable energies. That is one thing. What is also going on is, and that is not so much high energy prices, it is energy price stability and also energy supply stability. And we currently witness that many companies are complaining about uncertainty. Uncertainty about where will energy prices be next year, in 2 years, in 5 years from now, as a result of the green transition. But they're also worried that there might not be enough energy supply. And I think these two kinds of uncertainty are holding back investments in Germany itself.
Lack of workers is a storyline that has been floated by business leaders here in Germany, with a story I read recently that the Berlin Chamber of Commerce and Industry even going as far as Namibia to try to train and recruit workers. What role do you see a lack of workers playing here?
Well, the lack of workers clearly means that the supply side of the economy is limited, that we do have these supply side constraints. And you see it everywhere. But what does this mean, supply side constraints? It simply means that you won't get a service 24/7. Go to a store. You could go to a restaurant these days, and you will see a witness that sometimes they don't offer lunches anymore, but they only open for dinner times. If a factory doesn't have enough workers, they will have to cut down the production. So these are the supply side constraints that are clearly hitting the German economy. And what is even worse is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. So the demographic change has only just started. Over the next 5 years, we will see, I think, 5 to 7 million Germans leaving the labor market because they will get their well-deserved pension and retirement. So this problem of a lack of qualified workers is only getting worse. And yes, Germany needs some kind of immigration, or Germany goes fully into automation. That is the other alternative. So fill a vacancy with a robot. So this is clearly a challenge, and this will hamper the growth potential of the German economy over the next couple of years.
Carsten, last time we spoke, we talked about the German car industry, and it made me wonder, is it just the lagging car industry that's putting the brakes on the German economic recovery, or is there a bigger question about the entire German industrial output right now?
There is a big question mark behind the entire German industrial production. I think the automotive sector is the most prominent one, and the automotive sector is maybe also the most symbolic one. But other parts of industry are suffering from the same problems, namely, the cost positions are increasing. The energy uncertainty is also undermining cost positions. Then, on the other hand, there is Chinese competition, because it is not only in the automotive sector that China is competing now with Germany. In fact, we also have it in other industrial sectors. So this is clearly what is currently happening. And when you look beyond China, we also see that at least with the pandemic, or at the latest with the start of the war in Ukraine, the global economy has changed. We will see more deglobalization or reglobalization. So we will see that the global trade is changing. Whether in net terms it's going to be less or more, we don't know yet. But this means that German companies across the entire industrial spectrum that have been so dependent on exports also need to rethink their supply chains, need to rethink their export destinations, and rethinking and possibly restructuring also means higher costs, more money. And this is, I think, what is currently also holding back industrial production in general.
A shrinking economy can mean risk-adverse companies and consumers. It can also mean less tax revenue for a government. All of that can mean less investment. So it just has me wondering, are we at risk of some kind of economic doom loop here?
It depends, in all honesty. Germany remains, so let's say, to escape a little bit from the gloom and doom story, Germany is still a highly developed economy. Germany is still an economy with a lot of potential, with highly skilled people here, and a good starting position. Look at Japan, for example. Japan has been in a de facto stagnation for 2 decades in a row. So the only difference now between the Japan of the last 20 years and the Germany right now is that Japan saw its government debt increase significantly. So the question for Germany will be, yes, stagnation is okay. Well, you might be able to live with it if a government is willing to, for example, come up with more social transfers, come up with more investments, and is willing to absorb the negative consequences that stagnation can have on a society and on an economy via higher debt. But the combination of a stagnating economy and a debt break is unique.
The German economy minister has hinted at a proposed growth initiative. What could that look like?
Well, we have had a couple of growth initiatives yet, and the problem of the current German government is not so much the lack of ideas or the lack of good ideas, actually, but the implementation. Even when you look back at the coalition agreement, when the current government started, it ticked many good economic policy boxes. This growth initiative that is currently being talked about, and that the government at least agreed on this summer, is a combination of mainly structural reforms. Think of a reduction of bureaucracy, a reduction of red tape, trying to bring incentives for companies to invest in the construction sector, in new technologies, in green technologies. So this is all good stuff. Coming up or to improve the structural or the structures of the German economy. The only problem with this growth initiative is that currently there is still only a very small price tag on it. And that is, I think, we talk about something like 7 to 10 billion euro. Sounds big, but for an economy of the size of 3,700 billion euro, this is nothing. And therefore, the direction this growth initiative is taking is a good one. But the size is clearly too little. So what Germany would need is indeed go into this direction of structural reforms, reduce bureaucracy, bring in new incentives to invest, but also put in more money. So, digitalization, education, infrastructure. These are all public goods. So there is no way around it that the government will have to invest in these areas. That is clearly one thing that we need to see. And the other thing is also, how can you reduce bureaucracy by, for example, investing in e-government? So there, you won't get Germany again flourishing, Germany returning to a Wirtschaftswunder 3.0 without investments. Structural reforms alone will not do the trick.
In all this doom and gloom that we've been talking about, there was a hint of optimism from the German economy ministry for 2025. But do you think Germany's well positioned there, or is this more misplaced optimism?
I'm a bit afraid that this is the typical optimism we see from by forecasters made that next year everything will be fine again, because in order to get to this growth rate of around 1%, it actually means that the German economy would have to return to something like potential growth very quickly, I think first or at the latest second quarter of 2025. And I don't see this happening, because I think what the mistake is with predicting around 1% growth for next year is that it is still underestimating the structural weaknesses of the German economy. So in order, put a turnaround, in order to see the German economy again growing with something like 1% or even more, we need to see structural reforms. We need to see structural improvement, because currently in this current structural shape, I think a potential growth rate, a structural growth rate for Germany is rather 0.5% and definitely not 1% or more.
Carsten Brzeski, he's the global head of macro at ING. Carsten, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.